Hello, hope you internet strangers had a good week. I like film, I like games, and I do other stuff too. So here's the newest entries to my media diet diary. For this week's film, I decided to take a look at Do the Right Thing, one of many Spike Lee films that made him the dominant black director of the mid to late 90s and beyond. This is truly a film that matches the criteria of objectively good. The vibrant visual aesthetic of the New York borough in which the film takes place provides a lived-in backdrop for its characters to inhabit. The characters themselves are also very visually and thematically distinct, with color coding within the costuming that matches character mood and the tropes they represent. Bright and loud yellows and pinks contrast the cooler purples and blues in a way that sells the written dynamic in a visually entertaining way. Characters like Radio Raheem and Buggin' Out feel iconic in both design and dialogue, and this persists with most of the cast. I won't get into how Spike Lee writes the female characters in this film, but they are at least made serviceable by fantastic performances. All of this is backdropped with an emulation of heat and relief from said heat that feels extremely original to the film and its themes. This focus on strong contrast is represented in so many different ways visually and sonically, and acts in service of what becomes an iconic and timeless story about race in America. All of the individual themes, much like many scenes in the movie, could work great in isolation, but are compiled together for something grand in its thematic scale, but still maintains an intimacy in the film only made possible through its constrained isolation to the single borough. The nuances of the black experience, visualizing black joy, righteous hate and purposeful anger, the ability for hate and love to both be something that can blind and unify, and especially what the movie has to say about the nuances between the necessity of violent and nonviolent acts, work together to add layers to an already complex film. This is a really engaging watch, and I hope you'll give this one a look. I also think that Vincent Cunningham's essay on the film also provides some deeper insights into the film, so I will also encourage y'all to read it as some supplementary materials to enjoy with Do the Right Thing. The game for today is Shooty Shooty Robot Invasion. What I thought was going to be a simple and well-stylized 2.5D shooter left me with a very conflicted experience. Without a doubt, its strongest trait lies in the art style for the game. Vibrant colors and distinct character designs make this a lovely game to look at, and were the primary reason, outside of another I'll mention later, that I decided to buy the game. Although I do think the thick, singular tube-like veins on people's hands were an odd but extremely forgivable choice given how good the rest of the game looks. The game doesn't look fantastic all the time. There are some clipping NPC models in some places, and the FPS gamer in me wants the FOV way higher, or like any ability to modify it really. But again, these don't hamper the game extremely. What begins to be a little draining is the gameplay loop that keep the game from being something really elevated. On top of being a 2.5D FPS, this game has a major chunk of the gameplay focused on being a visual novel. I think this choice confuses my sensibilities in a really interesting way, in the sense that if the priority was for the game to be an FPS, the visual novel elements bog down the FPS elements by heavily impacting pacing. But if the game wanted to be a visual novel, the story elements evolve the stakes in a way that makes the gameplay more engaging. This experimentation with genre is something that is simultaneously interesting but incredibly frustrating playthrough at points, especially as the story begins to overtake gameplay. This is such a shame because there are really interesting elements that you get peeks at as you play. The parry-esque dodge and chunky feeling but smooth playing platforming is hauled away as quickly as you find it, as the oversimplified strafe right and hold left game loop flattens the other aspects of the game. I'm not entirely done, but I've played through a major chunk of the game and seen gameplay of future levels, and outside of some boss fights, this loop persists. As negatively as I have written about this game so far, it is still truly something to be grateful for as an experience, and I think this is something that comes through really well in its other major buying point for me, the story. All of the characters, in one way or another, are characterized heavily as very anti- or pro-AI, and the story draws its moral lines along that line in a very declarative way. Pro-AI characters are dull and lifeless or warped facsimiles of a human, while most everyone fighting the title's namesake of the Robot Invasion have distinct and vibrant designs. Past all the gameplay flaws and list of desires I personally have for the game, this is a mostly single dev project that declares a confident vision in what it seeks to say and how it chooses to present itself. And as a very anti-AI, pro-human advocate, I can't help but encourage and promote this type of project. So regardless of what I said, I truly hope you play the game and engage with another person's distinct voice and create your own dialogue with the work. And finally, to wrap up this video with today's grab bag section, I decided to take a look at Made to Skate. Suzushiro is an internet artist I have been following for a bit, who's primarily focused on drawing maids on skateboards. If you look at their account, there isn't really anything else that they do. And so when I found they were releasing a book based on this very specific niche that they had made for themselves, I was more than curious to see what they'd do to execute on that concept in a one-shot issue. It is nowhere near close to being that long or that complex a read, but within the pages is a visual love and understanding for Suzushiro's love for both topics. This manga is fully sold on the premise of the juxtaposition of the demure acts involved in being a maid and the expressive and countercultural visuals behind skate culture. Yes, it's a slice of life manga made on a gimmick that is near zero mileage in execution. Yes, the world and stories are overtaken by the vague European architecture and lack of any explanation towards the infrastructure of the world the maids exist in, providing negative depth to the story's world. And yes, it was highly probable that this exists solely because of the virality of Twitter and Instagram posts, but that doesn't matter. I will pay money to learn about a random person's hyperfixation just to see how much they like the thing they like. And that's what you get with this one shot. Despite the seemingly generic visual aesthetic, every panel still looks amazing. Expressive faces, fun designs, and technically impressive illustrations of the cloth that make up the signature maid outfits in the story create a book easy on the eyes. Made to Skate is at its best when the maids are skating and talking about skating. Key poses for the tricks and the flowing nature of the dresses give a sense of space and momentum that makes the sections where skateboards are being used more engaging. Top it off with a main character named after a signature skating trick and bonus pages that talk about the anatomy of a skateboard and how to do tricks, and you have a loving tribute to someone's very specific combination of interests that make for a wholly unique read. Go follow Suzushiro and give Made to Skate a quick and enjoyable read. So those were my entries for this week's Media Diet Diary. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below about your thoughts on this week's picks. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.